Very few people who boast about themselves as horror fans don't know about Konami's legendary horror franchise, Silent Hill. This ominous town, drenched in fog, holds secrets that will have you shivering at the very thought. Existential dread, madness and trauma are the permanent residents of this town. And out of all the places in this town, the most significant location is Alchemilla Hospital. Like a nexus of all evil, this hospital shows up in multiple games, in multiple states, almost acting like the heart of the story in a way. So join us as we explore everything about Alchemilla Hospital, from its origin, narrative significance, architecture, and a whole lot more. Now before we go into the video, we do have a small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. This is a small little click for you, but for us it means an awful lot. Thanks very much. Now let's begin. Origins of the Alchemilla Hospital. When it comes to the game franchise, we never get a detailed history of the origin of Alchemilla. However, it's implied that this hospital is the earliest modern medical institute in the entire town. I would go as far as to say that this establishment probably came into being when the Silent Hill town went from quaint little town to resort town. The Alchemilla Hospital probably served both as a treatment centre for locals as well as a tourist destination. However, the place where this hospital was built was unfortunate, to say the least. After all, it lies practically in the smack dab middle of Silent Hill's supernatural forces epicenter. The placement of the hospital can be considered a mere coincidence, but nothing about the Alchemilla Hospital is a coincidence. In fact, the name of the hospital itself has a deeper meaning to it. Alchemilla Hospital is named after Alchemilla vulgaris, more commonly known as the Lady's Mantle. It's a plant that was used in healing, alchemy, and mysticism. So in a way, just from the name itself, we can understand that the hospital is not just a place for physical care, but also for metaphysical things. Alchemy is a form of chemistry popularized in the Middle Ages, where the main goal was to transform ordinary materials into gold. So in a way, you could say that the main focus of alchemy was simple transformation. Perhaps this is why Alchemilla Hospital also acts as a space where physical spaces, psychological states, and the spirituality of a person undergo transformation. But can you blame it for being this way? From the very first day, the Alchemilla Hospital has been a place of paradox. It's a healing space that's quite literally built on cursed ground. Things were never going to go smoothly with this one. On top of that, there are actually no official records to be found about the building of the hospital. No architects, no financiers, not one. However, fans have a theory that perhaps the Alchemilla Hospital was built by the Order. If not directly, the builders of Alchemilla Hospital were backed up by the Order, and this is what led to the hospital becoming this terrifying institution of torment, which hid behind the visage of sterility and care. How did the Order affect the Alchemilla Hospital? The town of Silent Hill had a cult in it, which shouldn't surprise me or anyone else, because of course the mysterious town has a cult. And for Silent Hill, the mysterious religious cult is the one we know as the Order. They're a syncretic group with the elements of occult mysticism, shamanism, deriving from Native American culture and from Christianity. Like most cults, this one too began rather small. However, slowly it began infiltrating practically every aspect of life in Silent Hill, including all the medical institutions. Alchemilla Hospital became the house for all the rituals and experiments that the cult wanted to carry out. Now, every cult has a goal, right? I mean, Charles Manson's cult wanted to create white supremacy in a roundabout kind of way. The disciples of the Ram in Annabelle wanted to summon a demon, and the Order of Silent Hill wanted to create a god. I would say they were punching a tad bit over their weight class, but the Order didn't care about that. They wanted to create a god from scratch through ritualistic birthing. So the Alchemilla Hospital ended up becoming the best place where they could bring hosts, control the test subjects, and control the mechanisms for the ritualistic birthing. And of course, these kinds of experiments included psychiatric treatment paired with drugs. The drug in question is the White Claudia, a herb with hallucinogenic properties. Now, as you've probably guessed, none of this happened without the hospital administrator knowing, and Michael Kaufman, the hospital's administrator, was a huge part of it all. So Dr. Kaufman was a licensed practitioner, but instead of helping people who desperately needed help, might I add, Dr. Kaufman focused on drug trafficking and covering up patient abuse, as well as cult activities. In a way, you could say his manipulation corrupted the medical ethics in play into this weird religion of control and exploitation, which was perverse, ludicrous, and terrifying. Every ward of Alchemilla Hospital became a ritualistic altar. Every patient bed was like a sacrificial platform that was just waiting to happen. The hospital was no longer a hospital. It was now a laboratory for religious fanaticism and twisted ambition, and the line between science and sorcery was intentionally blurred. Several patients died within those walls, and no one knows exactly what claimed their lives. Alchemilla Hospital's introduction to the game. The first time we get to see the hospital in its full devious glory is in the original Silent Hill game that came out in 1999. In that game, we follow Harry Mason, who enters the town looking for his adopted daughter Cheryl. When he looks for her, he ends up coming across the Alchemilla Hospital. He explores the decrepit hospital, and we get to learn about it and understand just how treacherous those halls can be. What started off as seemingly innocent exploration quickly devolved into something akin to a descent into madness. At the beginning of this hospital exploration, the new players often tend to miss the hospital's map, which is exclusive to this hospital because other areas in the game have very obvious maps. Because a lot of people miss the map, they end up getting frustrated as the more and more lost in the corridors they get. But here's the thing, even if you were to see the map, you would still find yourself lost in the hospital because the layout of the hospital constantly shifts. The trippy experience of going through circles is enough to make you feel like you're losing your mind, and on top of that, you'll have haunting monster nurses going after you with stained uniforms and jerky movements. When you come across a room that isn't locked for a change, you'll find bloodstains and surgical tools, giving you a little glimpse at what kind of torture the patients may have gone through in the past. Not only that, the hospital also acts as the gateway to the other world, an alternate dimension that would 100% haunt your nightmares. The walls become blood-stained, the surfaces around the hospital covered in decay and rust, and you get to feel everything, including the air in the air, shift. This transition is not just an aesthetic transition, but a thematic one, because now you can truly understand the truth about this hospital under its surface. As Harry travels through the corridors of the hospital, it begins to mirror his unconscious fears back to him, along with Cheryl's psychic projections and Alyssa's suffering. All of these added together completely override the line between psyche and reality, turning Alchemilla Hospital into a place where all your fears would come true.
Someone else who's okay.
Who are you?
My name's Lisa Garland.
The tragedy that will never leave Alchemilla Hospital, Lisa Garland. All the characters in Silent Hill have some sort of tragedy laced within them. However, the most tragic of them all has been Lisa Garland, the nurse who couldn't escape the hospital. This nurse is caught in a purgatorial loop, bound to the very hospital itself. But what happened that led her to being tied there this way? Well, you see, Lisa Garland, born and raised in Silent Hill, originally wanted to be an actress. However, things didn't go well because family tradition always takes over hopes and dreams, and in her family, women went into nursing. So Lisa followed the family tradition and went into nursing, and later became part of Alchemilla's staff. She was tasked with taking care of Alessa Gillespie, the child who is the central plot of the entire mythos of Silent Hill. However, the problem was that Lisa was not just the caretaker. While she couldn't get into Hollywood, she still wanted that Hollywood life, and that led her to get hooked on PTV, the recreational drug that was made from White Claudia. The drug addiction made her complicit in everything that was going on in the hospital, including the order's manipulation of every patient and every staff. She had met Travis Grady, who wanted to uncover the truth about it all, but given that Dr. Kaufman was supplying her with the drugs, Lisa didn't want to uncover the truth. For 7 years, Lisa was Kaufman's puppet. He exploited her and had at least one sexual encounter with her in the Riverside Motel, using her drug addictions against her. All of these things added to Lisa and started taking a toll on her mental and physical well-being, so she started having hallucinations and even soon became neurotic and emotionally unstable. She often asked the Order to release her, but it never happened. Lisa's boyfriend, Matthew, finally had enough and he tried to save Lisa. About a day later, Harry and Cheryl show up in the town and Alessa and Cheryl met, but this had a disastrous effect. Cheryl reverted back to her former state and Alessa ended up projecting her nightmares all across the town. Matthew ended up dying when he came across Valtiel, the angel of rebirth that the cult worshipped. Lisa was killed by Valtiel as well. However, despite her death, Lisa couldn't reunite with her love because her spirit remained trapped in the nightmare that we know as the Otherworld. So in a way, we could say that Lisa remained trapped in the Alchemilla hospital because she simply couldn't let go of her guilt. She is often seen begging for help, pleading for forgiveness and recognition while she weeps blood. Why? Because her existence is nothing but torment. She's a victim in her own regard, of course, but she's also an enabler. She could have done a lot more. She could have done the bare minimum, but she chose not to because she wanted the PTV more than anything. But then again, she was exploited, blackmailed, and forcibly pushed into addiction, which makes her just as much of a victim as anyone else. She was supposed to heal people within the walls of the Alchemilla hospital, but in the end, Lisa ended up becoming a prisoner of those very walls, trapped and unable to let go. Her story arc is the epitome of the human cost of corruption. She was a vulnerable woman. She was never evil. However, the hospital became a trap that slowly gnawed away at her very soul. In the end, her fate mirrors those who were lost in the system, a system that was built to help them. Symbolism of Alchemilla. If there is one thing Alchemilla Hospital is good at, it has to be symbolic imagery. Throughout its appearances, the heavy-handed imagery is harder to ignore, unlike the patients whom Kaufman and his staff found rather easy to ignore and discard. The Alchemilla Hospital was originally built with a focus on physical ailments, so it makes sense that this hospital would be decked out in surgical stuff as we see in the game. However, after the Order corrupted the Alchemilla Hospital, this became the place for unnatural birth. So you see a lot of womb imagery in the hospital. Operating room birthing suites with a lot of long tube-like hallways. The themes of gestation and fertility are really evident. But then the hospital ended up becoming a burial ground for a lot of people because several patients never left it alive when Alchemilla Hospital was fully functional. So this is why we see the Otherworld period of the Alchemilla Hospital and it's full of decay. The rooms are filled with body bags, decayed flesh, morgue slabs. And as the geography of the Alchemilla Hospital keeps changing throughout the gameplay, as I've mentioned before, this is a representation of trauma and confusion that comes with it. So on top of all of this, we can see the evident signs of surgical malpractice and religious sacrifice throughout the game. The walls of the hospital were stained with handprints and the locked operating rooms suggest the horrifying acts that may have taken place within. Alchemilla Hospital acted both as the beginning and the end for several people. Life was manipulated within those walls, even though this was a place where life was supposed to be preserved and protected. The Alchemilla Hospital is the place that kept Alessa alive after the fire, and this is also where Harry's journey began. Alchemilla's evolution, Heather's journey. In the Silent Hill 3 game, we get to see a new side of the hospital. In this game, we see Heather Mason come to town. Heather is Cheryl's reincarnation and Harry's adopted daughter. Now, while the Alchemilla Hospital doesn't act as a central location for this game, you can still feel its presence throughout the gameplay. While in the original game, Alchemilla Hospital was mirroring Alessa's nightmare, this time round we see it mirroring Heather's inner turmoil, which is a lot more personal. There's questions of identity, the rebirth that the cult demands of her, and the trauma that she feels from spiritual inheritance. As you can see, these are much more personal to her. So in a way, it kind of explains why the hospital looks more like a perverse birthing chamber. The hospital infrastructure reflects Heather's internal conflict a lot, with the failed medical equipment and the fetal imagery paired with the surgical gore. Should she choose womanhood, or should she choose sacrifice like she was meant to?
What was that thing?
Travis Grady and his medical trauma. Travis Grady, in Silent Hill Origins, is dealing with his childhood trauma and visits Alchemilla as part of the journey. It turns out his mother, Helen, was actually institutionalized because she tried to kill him. This particular part of his personal history becomes a part of Alchemilla's walls as Travis walks through the halls. For Travis, this hospital is the place where he explored his parental guilt, familial trauma and institutional cruelty that patients went through at the hands of psychiatric doctors at the time. Helen, like a lot of female patients, was lobotomized, a treatment specifically given to women labelled hysterical. Alchemilla serves as a memorial for medical violence that a lot of psychiatric institutions are guilty of, unfortunately. During Travis's journey through the hospital, we get to see the mental wards of Alchemilla Hospital, and they are haunting to say the least. We see padded cells, ghostly figures, and the rust-covered wheelchairs which serve as the only remaining reminder of what went down between those walls at one point in time. Travis ends up confronting his mother's memory within the walls, which is heartbreaking and symbolic, exploring just how badly Alchemilla has managed to torment the soul and fracture the mind. Monsters born of pain. When you roam the halls of Alchemilla, you come across a lot of different monsters. However, they're not just generic foes. Even they have a deep symbolism, showcasing just how evil of a place this hospital is. The nurses we see in Alchemilla Hospital are faceless but extremely sexualized by how their uniforms hang to their bodies. While Alchemilla nurses are something a lot of cosplayers have pulled off over the years at the game cons, there's no denying that these nurses are the faceless representation of repressed guilt and desire that echoes the corridors of the hospital. We also have the straitjacket creatures, who underneath their terrifying visage and ferocity represent the helplessness and confinement of every patient who ended up there. In some games we see the doctors themselves as monsters, and they're always cold and calculating, armed with scalpels and syringes. Each of these monsters in Alchemilla reinforces the transformation of medical care into experimentation and punishment. How does Brookhaven Hospital compare to Alchemilla Hospital? In the Silent Hill franchise, another major hospital in the quaint little town is that of Brookhaven Hospital. While Alchemilla dealt with physical medicine, surgery, and the occult, Brookhaven was a psychiatric facility through and through. In the walls of Alchemilla, we see the horrors of birth and death, the medical corruption that Michael Kaufman created, and the aftermath of these cultic rituals. Brookhaven, on the other hand, showcases the repression of feelings, memory, and mental illness issues that were exploited throughout Silent Hill. Alchemilla Hospital in the Silent Hill movie. The 2006 Silent Hill movie definitely has some liberties taken regarding the game's canon. However, the Alchemilla Hospital we see in this movie is quite similar to the original game's hospital. Rose de Silva, our main protagonist, shows up in Silent Hill looking for her adopted daughter Sharon, who's effectively a stand-in for both Cheryl and Alessa. The halls of the hospital are full of blood-stained gurneys and flickering lights, exuding the unease that we've grown accustomed to when we traverse through the hallways of Alchemilla in the game. While Dr. Kaufman is not present in the movie, the themes of corruption, of medical care, and the horrors of institutionalization remain rampant. The movie doubles down on imagery of the hospital being a gateway to the hellish dimensions beyond, adding more to the hospital with barbed wire death and armless creatures. Say what you want about narrative changes for the movie, but even the most hardcore fan of the Silent Hill franchise would have to agree that the filmmakers really got the visual representation of Alchemilla down to a T. The essence of decayed beauty that has been corrupted was portrayed very well in the movie's hospital. The psychological impact of Alchemilla's layout. There is no denying that Alchemilla Hospital's layout is the most confusing thing ever. We have long, winding hallways with no ends, we have elevators that skip floors, we have rows of locked rooms that seemingly lead nowhere, and with the ever-changing layout, entering Alchemilla feels like entering a new space as a whole. This confusing layout that we see actually represents the erosion of reality that everyone feels when they're under a lot of psychological stress. The structure of the hospital reflects the town's inherently unstable nature, as well as the fractured state of the minds of the characters. The elevator scene can be interpreted as us travelling deeper into the minds of the characters, descending into the subconscious, which triggers the hospital's mirroring of one's fears and suppressed memories. In a way, you could say that Alchemilla too has a living architecture, much like the Overlook Hotel from The Shining. Instead of having Monster House-esque claws and sharp teeth, Alchemilla shifts colours, changes design and decoration, and introduces us to something darker, like it's a second nature. Alchemilla Hospital is a sentient structure that can only be as brutal as your mind is willing to be. The real-life inspirations of Alchemilla Hospital. Now, Alchemilla Hospital is very terrifying, right? But here's the thing. Konami didn't come up with something from nothing. Alchemilla Hospital borrows mostly from very real history and horror tropes that are closely associated with mental asylums and medical institutions. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, there's a well-known record of psychiatric hospitals treating patients like they were cattle and not people. This was through lobotomies, electroshock therapy, hot water immersion therapy, as we saw in Nurse Ratched, isolation tanks, and much more. In the Alchemilla Hospital, we see patients being treated less than human, nurses and doctors not caring about them or being complicit in the neglect and the corrupted caring for the people. One of the biggest inspirations of the Alchemilla Hospital has to be the Danvers State Hospital, which has also served as the inspiration for Arkham Asylum in Batman. All of these places, including Alchemilla Hospital, were created to reform, treat, heal, and isolate mentally or physically unwell patients. However, instead they end up becoming places that torment these people, leaving them a husk of who they used to be. Alchemilla also adds that layer of occultism and existential dread within these other tropes, making the haunted asylum trope, which is huge in the horror genre, and makes it something all the more unsettling. The idea of medicine being monstrous, medicine going wrong, it's far more horrifying than just any ghost that we might encounter. Care turning into captivity is a very real problem in this world, and while medical care turning into captivity isn't something a lot of us have felt or seen firsthand, the abusive relationship symbolism is not lost on us. Liminal space aspect of Alchemilla. A liminal space is a space where a transition or transformation between two states of being occurs. And in the Silent Hill world, Alchemilla is practically the liminal space. It's a threshold, not just between life and death, it's a threshold between the Order's influence and the physical world, and reality and the other world. Alchemilla should be treating people, but instead it transforms its patients, mostly for worse. So in this place, it acts as a space of unbecoming, making characters lose themselves, confront horrifying truths about themselves, and sometimes just becoming monsters. The hospital is not just a setting, it's like a petri dish, where every aspect of the human condition is inspected thoroughly. That's why it's a nexus point of Silent Hill, where all the horrifying aspects of the human psyche can be explored. Fan theories about Alchemilla's true purpose. Silent Hill fandom has grown over the years, and fans are relentless in scouring the minute details present in the story to make sense of the world. Fans have developed quite a few theories that range from very plausible to a bit more chin scratching. The most plausible theory about the hospital is that it's a front for the Order. Instead of being a place where rituals are performed, maybe the Order intentionally funded this hospital hoping to get more and more willing victims for their little science experiments. Some believe that Alchemilla is actually a spiritual battery. Since the hospital has shown up so many times, fans think that it probably lies in the middle of two or more dimensions. It traps the suffering of all the people who step foot in it and uses that energy to power the other world that you witness when you get to that world. The commonality with a lot of these theories, including the ones I've just mentioned, is that it's very clear that a lot of fans feel that Alchemilla is not just a location on a map. Alchemilla's effect on fans. With an ever-growing fandom, several fan-made games and mods based on the Silent Hill world and Alchemilla have been created. One of the most mentioned source engines has to be the one named Alchemilla. It allows you to experience the hospital in 3 dimensions, creating an uncomfortable atmosphere that leaves a lasting mark on even the most seasoned horror gamer. With all of these projects based on Alchemilla coming out across the years, it's clear that Alchemilla is not just a backdrop. It's one of those iconic horror places like the Overlook Hotel, like Raccoon City Hospital, that gives birth to more and more narrative possibilities. Marvelous verdict. Alchemilla Hospital may seem like just another haunted house trope when you first come across it. However, the more you look, you'll realize that this hospital acts as the convergence point for a lot of potent fears that the entire Silent Hill franchise needs to run on. Those potent fears in question are religious corruption, psychological trauma, bodily violation, medical horror, and of course, personal guilt. Because of these, the Alchemilla Hospital acts as the center stage where important characters go through their biggest character arcs. A place where horror meets healing, that is Alchemilla Hospital for you. And with that, we come to the end of the video. Let us know what you think about the Alchemilla Hospital in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video. That's all for now, take care.